You know that hymn, I know you know it. You who came down to the lake shore. Do you know it? Have you ever heard it? Well, anyway, we love that. We love that hymn. And the reason that I mention that is that that's what happens with Jesus right after he crosses on a heart-shaped lake. That's how Frederick Buechner describes it. He crossed a heart-shaped lake on the Gentile side to get to the other side, and so he came up on that lake shore. And I mentioned that the lake was heart-shaped because I think it expresses, what's happening with you all here in your congregation. In your partnerships now with folks in hope and healing, your heart is big in the various kinds of ministries that you do. And I'm talking about the fact that it's obvious to me that your heart stays close to the heart of God in all of the ministries that you do. So people come here and join the congregation, and you also, so you take care of each other, and you take care of the people who come to you, and you even go outside of the congregation and take your blessings to them, and that includes us at St. John's Church in West Milwaukee. So you've been visiting us a number of times at our breakfast, and you have given us hope, and you've given us also this healing in the enthusiasm that you showed for the ministry that we share. It's a ministry of care to military folks and their families and all of the people that are in our neighborhood. So we're thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here today and to tell you the story about St. John's and also just about hope and healing in our lives. And so I'll refer back, I mentioned the lake shore, and I'll refer back to an earlier life of mine in which it was one that I had weekends off. And so I would take a lawn chair on a Saturday morning in the summertime when it was nice and warm, and I would take the newspaper and I would head over to Terry Andre Park to the beach. And my intent was to sit there and read the newspaper and, kind of just relax and enjoy myself, but I never read the newspaper. I never got to it, because I was always watching everything that was going on around the beach, and I was amazed at how creative people were in terms of how they went about their playfulness on the beach. I mean, they did just a little bit of everything, and no two people seemed to do the same thing together. I mean, there's one guy flying a kite, and then there's somebody else flipping a frisbee. There's a bunch of people got a Nerf ball. They're playing tackle football in the water. People are building sand castles. Kids are coming with their little buckets and their shovels and their sifters, and they're digging in the sand and they're sifting, looking for all these mysterious kind of things you could find in the sand. And people walking the beach just picking up these relics that wash up, and all of that kind of playfulness, all kinds of it. Two people did the same thing. And there was this one group that came this time, and this was a group of college students, and they brought a big shovel, and they decided to dig a real deep hole. I mean, a deep hole. Don't try this at home, anybody, especially any young people that are listening. Do not do this. They dug this hole. One guy got in the hole, and he was in there up to his head. Then they filled in the sand, so it was just his head sticking out of the sand. And you would think that was enough. But then, with this head sticking out of the sand, and he's so vulnerable, and he's just looking ahead. So then they took popcorn, and they threw it around his head, and all the seagulls came and balked and squawked and ate the popcorn around his head. And I mean, with friends like that, who needs enemies, So I mention that because that idea and that creativeness kind of stirred up the people of St. John's as I went into pastoral ministry there, in terms of stirring up the gifts within us and this creativity. And we were always looking for ways that we might do things that are life-giving for people, that are just creative, different ways of doing that. So I say, we as the body of Christ in the place on 55th and Greenfield, many times these gifts, the power would go out of us, the body of Christ, and into these people who receive these life-giving gifts from us. And it's also our gift that we're able to serve the people that we serve. But the kind of things that I'm talking about are, we have, for example, neighborhood singers. So that means anybody who comes to the breakfast, maybe people who haven't even sung before, maybe it's somebody who has Alzheimer's, who knows? It's always a motley group of people that just decide to come up and sing kind of favorite songs that people know. One week, that Ben came down with a group of people, and he played the piano. And I don't know if he even noticed or not, but over the piano there's a sign that says, "No kissing the piano player." And Ben, to this day, has not told me whether or not anybody kissed him, but that's another story. We won't even go there. But we had, these people with Alzheimer's would come up, and they would sing. And there was Marie, and she would dance, and she knew the words, because music is life-giving. And the beautiful song that the choir was singing, that was beautiful and life-giving for me. I'll just make a testimony there. So we have the neighborhood breakfast, and we've also had, because we're so close to the Veterans Administration Hospital and we do ministry of care to military folks and their families, there's a group of vets who were over at the hospital doing therapy, post-traumatic stress syndrome veterans, and the VA is overwhelmed. And so they're in a program for just a year, and then they say, okay, another group comes in, they start another program. So one of the things that they were doing was making these flies for fly fishing. So they make these flies together and talk together and do all of that, and then after they completed making the flies, they'd go fishing using the flies that they had. So there was that kind of thing that was life-giving for those folks who came. And we have a barista, that makes these specialty coffees. And we do that because Starbucks donated a ton of coffee to us so that we can take and make these specialty coffees for people, and we really spoil them. We make the caramel macchiatos or whatever they call those things. I probably got that wrong. But all of these specialty type things, because we want to try to exceed people's expectations of what's going to happen kind of when they come to this breakfast. So we have a dessert table, and we're a church, so the calories don't count. We make sure that people know that. We even have a bacon Nazi, and I say bacon Nazi, well, you know what a soup Nazi is, no more soup, you've probably seen it. Well, our bacon Nazi, she's told by the boss in the kitchen, 2 pieces of bacon for people. She's a lousy bacon Nazi, She always gives them more bacon. It's like Pat, we got rules around here. So we have a bacon Nazi. And in our experience, too, we've had like yoga. We've done yoga for people and had yoga classes where, can you picture a group of 15, 20 people, some of them homeless, some of them not homeless, some of them veterans, some of them, maybe, whatever their experience is, coming to a yoga class and enjoying that. We've also had chair massage. We had a person she went to beauty college school and learned how to do massages. So she brought her chair in, and she would do 25 or 30 massages for people that nobody gives a massage to. And they loved it. They were lifting people up. Ben mentioned the foot washing that we're going to be doing here coming up, and he's right, we haven't done that before. But when Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, he washed the feet of his disciples. It was almost like he was glorifying them. He was lifting them up. This is what it is to be a servant. And if you're going to be a servant, you need to be lifted up. So it's almost like he glorified them. It's amazing. And so that's kind of the attitude that we have at St. John's about the people who come to us. Because I have to mention Marquette student nurses, because I know for the service last night, I guess it was, there's a person here who teaches the Marquette nurses at the university. So we have this group of nurses that works in conjunction with the West Allis West Milwaukee Health Department, which that health department, by the way, has embedded themselves with us. They bring in serums for flu shots and tetanus shots and pneumonia shots. They've done that just for us because we have so many people that come. But our student nurses, they always have a project that they do each semester that they come. And so one time the project was that one girl did the yoga. And then they did a talent show, which was great, getting everybody up, and they did talent. And they did a podiatrist come in and help people with foot care. Not the same kind of care that we're talking about, but a different kind of foot care. Did that kind of thing. And their latest project, and raise your hand if you've ever heard of this, adult coloring. You've heard, see, I am so far behind the times. I just learned about that this last week when they told me what the project was. I said, adult coloring? Are we sure we want to do that? Anyway, so they showed me what it is. It's wonderful, a way to focus and remove the stress kind of by doing this art piece that they do. And so we're located on 55th and Greenfield, and that's right in the shadow of the Veterans Administration Hospital. And we say for our congregation, for us, it's the shadow of the cross. If we ever thought that we were going to take God out into our community, well, we were dead wrong. Turns out God is already in the community, and God comes to us in all these people who come to us. So we do, probably between our pantry and our breakfast, maybe 500 people a week, every week that we do. And that means that Jesus comes to us in every one of them. And not everyone behaves like Jesus, but nevertheless, Jesus comes. So we say that, tacos is the gospel for people who are hungry. That's what you guys do. We say bread is the gospel for those who are hungry. So it's very much we have in common in that way when I talk about that nearness to the heart of God in terms of how we go about and do things. So because Jesus comes to us in all the people who come to us, we will never be as holy as the people who come to us, and we get to serve them. It's a privilege and an honor for us to serve them. It's our responsibility to lift them up, glorify them like Jesus did with his disciples. So I am so thankful to be here to tell you today about our congregation. And I know that you are on this journey during your Lenten period of time here for hope and healing is your focus. And you have brought about so much of that hope and healing, and I hope our story from St. John's is helpful for you in that. And I know the stories of the guest pastors you've had before me also are part of the way of just hope it encourages you in your hope and healing as you move forward. And as you are, and my prayer is that you would stay close to the heart of God so that things unfold in your community, in your context, as they should. And so I have to tell you a little story. This is a story about Picture Day. And Picture Day was that Carla had come to me, and she asked me if there was something different that we could do. And I'm reminded of Jairus here in the story with Jesus, that Jesus walked with Jairus to the healing of his daughter. And so this was kind of a new way for us to walk with the people, to their healing. And so Carla said, what should we do? And I said, well, I think it'd be great if we had like a photographer come and take a nice, photo portrait of people. Not everybody gets to have one of those, and many of the people who come to us certainly don't. And so we thought it would be nice if people had a nice picture of themselves. They could bring a friend, they could have family members, just have a nice picture. That was the plan. So she put out an APB on Facebook, and she, so Dawn from Madison, who's a former colleague of her, Carla is a nurse at Children's Hospital, and this Dawn person in Madison had also been a nurse, but she's a professional photographer. And she said she would come. So she was going to be able to come on November 19th of last year, and so that set a whole bunch of things in motion. And so people started to sign up. We had 50 or 60 people sign up to have their pictures taken, and also of just them individually, and then some had families that wanted to come. So we had that all set up. And then the morning that Dawn came on November 19th, we had our prayer circle, what we always do, which is 100 people in a prayer circle. And we all said hello to Dawn, and then we set her up upstairs to have pictures. And the Marquette student nurses took the people, they had a list, and they would take them up, and they'd have their picture taken. And Kim, who also is one of the nurses from Children's Hospital, even though people had already signed up, Kim was inviting all kinds of other people to go ahead and have their picture taken since the photographer was here. So she asked this gentleman, who the best way that I could describe him would be that he's a beggar. I mean, he carries a bag that probably has every possession in it that he's ever owned. And not just the bag, but he's disheveled, he's not shaved. He probably has more than one layer of clothes on, just to keep warm when it's cold outside. So everything he's got, he carries with him. He wants to have his picture taken. So I said, well, okay, I'll go up with you and show you where you have your picture taken. So I walked with him, and there was a line when we got up there, and I waited with him in the line. And then just before, he was ready to go in, I thought, I'm going to go around and just see how Dawn is doing this and what she's doing with the pictures. And so I went around to the door on the side where I could see what she was doing, and I saw this gentleman come in, and he sat down in the chair, and she smiled at him. I mean, it was a friendly smile. And then she walked over to him, and she was so gentle. You know, she took the hair that was hanging down his face, and she just kind of brushed it back. And then she took, and like her fingers made a comb out of her hand, and she just kind of, fixed his hair. She wanted to see his whole face, take a picture of his whole face, all of him. And so she did that, very gentle, very tender. And then she went back, and she said, smile. And I don't even remember if this guy smiled, but she took the picture. And I stood there, and a tear came to my eye. Here, we thought we had a photographer coming from Madison, and we got Christ. It was so obvious and so present, the way that she was giving life to that person. Now, I don't know how long he remembers that. It was just that moment. But at that moment, that man knew he was loved. You could feel it. And so I say to myself, that was kind of like Jesus when he went up to the little girl. It was like this photographer going up to the man and saying, Talitha cum, little one, get up. And he did get up. So today, from across a heart-shaped lake, Jesus comes to us, and Jesus is present with us now. And it's as if he comes to each of us, and he smiles, and he takes and he brushes back the hair so that he can see all of our face. And we can feel his presence so near to us and so close to us. And he says to us as he takes us by the hand, Talitha cum, little one, get up. And then, well, he says this to the family members or the parents who are there. He said, well, for God's sakes, don't just sit there. Give them something to eat.